Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kirk Almasian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live stream, whether you're watching this on YouTube or on Rumble. And a special thanks to our friends, Red Access and Johan, for moderating the live chat. And thank you so much, Red Access, for your kind words about my quick video yesterday I posted on Syriana Analysis. As I was leaving the gym, I learned that the United States will soon authorize, or Donald Trump will authorize, possibly authorize airstrikes and strikes against Venezuela. So I had to say what I had to say. And unfortunately, I do believe that the US can and could destroy Venezuela and topple the Maduro government because of many reasons and factors I explained. So you can go and watch that. But today we're going to speak about the recent, let's say, statements of Donald Trump at the Hanukkah event, at the Jewish event, basically bragging about selling the Golan Heights to Israel as if he owns that territory. So in today's stream, I don't want to start with maps or military statistics. I want to start with one sentence spoken in the East Room of the White House at the Hanukkah reception. Quotation, "I sold the rights to the Golan Heights to Israel. It could be worth trillions of dollars." That's Donald Trump, by the way, speaking, or basically bragging, actually, about a decision he took in March 2019 to recognize Israeli sovereignty over the occupied Syrian Golan Heights. And then, in the same room, he turns to the billionaire donor Miriam Adelson and talks about the hundreds of millions she is ready to spend on his political career or in the next political, let's say, the presidential election. So there are talks about in the United States that he could, I don't know, maybe amend the constitution and participate in the next elections as for the third time. So my friends, in tonight's stream, I'm going to address 4 things, and then at the last part of this stream, I will give you some examples about al-haywan al-siyasiyya. As you may know, this is an Arabic word. Haywan means when somebody acts in an animalistic manner, but it doesn't mean you are acting in a vicious manner, but rather without logic. So someone who becomes like politically illogical, and how they have scored own goals against their own people. And some of these people are actually Syrians who supported the regime change and now they regret. So I'm going to show you some of these examples. Brace yourself for that. So the first thing we will address, how a US president basically can allegedly recognize the Golan as Israeli territory. And the second, why the Golan Heights are so important for Syria, for Israel, for Lebanon, and the whole region. Who Miriam Adelson is, and how her money shapes US policy on Israel, Palestine, and the Golan. And finally, we will try to address what this reveals about US donors' campaign finance and decisions that literally redraw the maps of the Middle East and possibly in other regions in the world as well. So I think in today's episode, we should start with a very basic and simple question, and that is, can a US president sell the Golan Heights? I think that's a very simple and important question. And the short answer is, of course, no. Legally, no. But politically, of course, Trump can act as if he did, right? So let's be clear on the legal reality. The Golan Heights, my friends, are Syrian territory occupied by Israel since the 1967 war. Israel unilaterally applied its laws, or annexed it, basically, and applied its laws, jurisdiction, and administration there in 1981. The UN Security Council responded with Resolution 497, declaring the annexation, quote, null and void and without international legal effect, quote, ended, and demanded Israel to annul its occupation and annexation of the Syrian Golan Heights. So from the standpoint of international law, which it doesn't exist. There is no international law, my friends. There is no rules-based international order. There is no international community. Those are just empty words for the people who this superpower wants to subjugate, it only applies on them, right? But let's pretend there is international law. Under international law, the Golan remains occupied Syrian land. Every year, UN resolutions reaffirm this. Now, what did Trump actually do in this case, right? We remember this was a few years ago in his on his first term in March 2019. Trump signed a presidential proclamation recognizing Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. Of course, this doesn't mean that he is legally able to transfer sovereignty in any legal sense, but it simply means the US as a state and as a superpower decided that we'll treat the Golan as if it were Israel. So this recognition, alleged recognition, doesn't cancel UN resolutions, doesn't erase Syria's legal title, and doesn't bind any country. But politically speaking, it is very huge because the world's most powerful state, or the superpower, is basically saying, we don't give a F what the UN says. We accept annexation by force, at least when our ally does it, and especially Israel, right? Now, years later, Trump stands in the White House and boasts. And he says the following. I'm going to show you the video so we can understand what he is basically saying here.
We also recognize the Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. Right? And that's one they didn't even ask me. Even Sheldon, who was the most aggressive human being there is in the entire world, this incredible woman, although she had total control. He was aggressive with everybody, but Miriam, he wouldn't play games with Miriam, but he was actually a sweetheart. But he never even asked me about the Golan Heights because he said, that's a step too far. I actually gave it because I called up. I heard so much about Golan Heights. From Jason Greenblatt, I heard it from so many people. And I actually asked David Friedman. I said, he was the ambassador at the time, good guy. He said, and by the way, Mike Huckabee's doing a great job now. Two good ones, two very good ones. But I asked David Friedman, I don't know if David's here, but I asked him because he is so Israel-oriented. I mean, he's great. I said, David, tell me about Golan Heights in 5 minutes or less. You know, I'm taking in like 1,000 years of history in 5 minutes. I said, give it to me in 5 minutes or less. And after about 2 minutes, I said, I understand. You need it so badly for so many other reasons. You need it for defense. You know, in the old days, before we had all the sophisticated radar and all the things, it was everything because you were up high. But I learned enough and I signed the Golan Heights, the rights to the Golan Heights over to Israel. Nobody thought that was possible to get. They've been working on it for 70 years, Mark. 70 years. You know, planes would fly into places that have meetings that would last 2-3 days. All they talked about was the Golan Heights, right, Jason? And nobody ever did anything, but I did it, and we did it quickly. And I say, good luck to you. Then I found out the value of it, trillions of dollars. It could be worth, if you think, trillions of dollars. I said, you know, maybe I should have asked him for something.
Guys, this is the president of the United States. I don't know if you're an American watching this. I don't know how do you feel about it. He basically said, quote, I sold the rights, right? Like, how can a US president sell the rights to a land he doesn't own, that his country doesn't own, that is legally recognized as Syrian territory? He can't, right? If we speak of the legality. But in the imperial mindset, of course he can. Because the assumption is Washington is the ultimate arbiter. If the US recognizes, that's good as owning the deed. A signature from the White House is treated like a title deed in a real estate transaction. What's even more striking and revealing is how Trump described the decision process, right? Back in 2019, he literally said he made the Golan decision after a quick history lesson. Basically, he made his decision after a quickie, my friends. And this quickie, of course, it wasn't what you think it is. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe, as some people said, it's in the Epstein's file. Anyways, but this quickie was a quickie briefing from his advisors. So, my friends, we have decades of UN resolutions, serious questions of war, displacement and occupation, water resources, oil discoveries that millions depend on. But the decision is made after a quickie chat, then later retold by Trump himself as if he sold the rights to land worth trillions. Of course, this is not just about, this doesn't only show basically the personality of Trump, also it exposes how imperial powers, or in this case, the United States, behave when it has no real checks. So if you give something away that doesn't belong to you, and as you can see in this video, or you saw in this video, he was uploaded for it, then there is nothing we can say about it, but this is the pure definition of what an ugly empire looks like, right? Anyways, I will just make this save. So, my friends, why the Golan Heights matter so much? If you join this stream, if you're watching this video later, you will be informed of the full story, why the Golan Heights matter so much for everyone. In my opinion, to understand why this one plateau is so central, we need a quick tour of its history and geography. The Golan Heights is relatively small area, as you may know. It's like 1,200 square kilometer. But look at it where it sits. I will show you the map. So, Golan Heights. This map is from the BBC. And let me just hide this one. So as you can see on the map, this yellow part is the Golan Heights. And the orange part is Qunaytira. Those are newly annexed territories after the fall of the former Assad government. So as you see, if you look at it, it is roughly 60 kilometers from away from Damascus, so very close from Syria's capital. The Golan overlooks northern Palestine or northern Israel. It borders Lebanon and Jordan. Now, before 1967, this area was fully part of Syria, but during the Six-Day War, as you can see on the map, it's already mentioned, this territory has been occupied. Israel captured it, and around 90,000 Syrians and Palestinians were displaced or fled, and Israel began to establish settlements on the plateau. The UN Security Council in 1967 and 1973 responded quickly with Resolution 242, as I mentioned, and affirmed the inadmissibility of the acquisition of territory by war and called for the withdrawal from territories occupied in 1967, including the Golan and the Sinai. Now, in 1973, my friends, in the October War, which was a surprise attack by Egypt and Syria against Israel to liberate the territories they lost in 1967, the Syrian and the Egyptian side initially made gains, but were pushed back largely due to massive American support for Israel. Now, after the war in 1973, Resolution 338 was adopted in the UN Security Council, and again called for the implementation of 242 and the negotiated settlement. So, in 1981, against the will of the so-called international community and against international law, Israel passed the Golan Heights law, effectively annexing the territory. 3 days later, the UN Security Council unanimously adopted Resolution 497, declaring the annexation, quote, null and void. So beyond the legal story, my friends, which, you know, if you're watching this channel and you follow the international relations, geopolitics, the laws do not really matter. What makes Golan so valuable? Let's talk about that, because that's the most important part and why Israel is occupying this territory. I think the first thing we have to accept, and that is the importance of Golan as a strategic high ground, right? Now, militarily, the Golan is, of course, a natural fortress. There is an old video of Netanyahu. I was searching for it all day today, and finally I found it. Finally, I found it. And Netanyahu basically says the following. I will show you this video because it's very important and for us to understand what Netanyahu believes and why he is correct. He is correct. I mean, he's not lying here, unlike in other statements.
And the Sinai is enormous. It would take 7 days for the Egyptian army, if God forbid we
So
had
it
a
depends
violation.
on what land you're talking about,
Well,
doesn't it?
it makes a hell of a difference for the following reason. 7 days it would take the Egyptian army under some hypothetical future government that would tear away the peace treaty and say we're invading Israel. It would take them 7 days from the Suez Canal to the Israeli border in the Negev. But in the Golan Heights, if we're not up there in the Golan Heights, it would take 7 hours for the Syrian army to storm into the Galilee and invade northern Israel. So the Sinai is not the Golan, and that's why you can't draw these identical parallels. And the Sinai is...
I mean, militarily, he's correct. If you strike a deal with Egypt and you give them back the Sinai through diplomatic means, negotiations, even if hypothetically in the future there was a government who said, F it, we don't want to respect the peace treaty between us and Israel, and we're going to attack Israel again, they will need, how many days? He said 7 days for the Egyptian army to theoretically to move from the first line of defense into the Sinai, from the Sinai through all the way to the first, let's say, meeting point with any Israeli occupation forces. So that makes a big, big difference, right? Now, unlike the Golan Heights, he says, in 7 hours, the Syrian army, we're talking hypothetically, can cross the Golan Heights and reach into the heart of Israel. Of course, when there was a Syrian national army, there is no longer Syrian national army. Anyways, you get my point, right? Anyways, whether these numbers, my friends, that Netanyahu mentioned are literal or rhetorical, he's sending a clear message here, right? He says, basically, from the Golan, if you occupy the Golan, then you have a commanding view over northern Israel, including the Hula Valley and the Sea of Galilee. If the plateau is in hostile hands, Israeli planners imagine Syrian tanks rolling downhill toward the Galilee in a few hours. And finally, if it is in Israeli hands, then Syria's approach to the south is exposed and difficult, right? So for Syria, it should be the opposite. Giving up the Golan means accepting that a foreign army sits on a high ground overlooking your heartland, just dozens of kilometers from your capital. Now, no serious Syrian government, past, present, or future, should accept that unless, of course, you are a CIA asset like Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, who has given up on the Golan Heights. Now, let's talk about a little bit of water and agriculture. You may think this is boring, but it is not. It is very important for Israel, and that's one of the main reasons why they occupy the Golan. The first is defense, the second is water and agriculture. The Golan, my friends, is a key resource for the Jordan River, the Sea of Galilee, and several smaller rivers and springs. So the plateau's additionally, the plateau's volcanic soil makes it good for agriculture, vineyards, orchards, and livestock. Now, various estimates say the Golan contributes a very significant share of Israel's fresh water, often cited as roughly a third of its freshwater supply. So the third of the freshwater supply of the Israelis come from the Syrian-occupied Golan Heights. We are giving them this freshwater. So whoever controls the Golan has serious leverage, right, over water security and over also the national security in the region. That's why the Israelis, in my opinion, will never give up the Golan Heights to the Jolani regime, and they have not intended on giving it back also to the previous government led by Bashar al-Assad. Now, of course, many people also say there are lots of gas and oil discoveries. I accept that premise, and also the Rothschilds are there, and many also British companies are extracting and discovering oil beneath the Golan Heights, and that's why probably Donald Trump said this is worth trillions of dollars, right, for the Israelis, and he wants probably a cut from it. Anyways, let's talk about a little bit of the demographics in the Golan Heights, because that's important. And today, roughly 50,000 people live in the occupied Golan. About half are Syrian Druze, many of whom have refused Israeli citizenship and maintained their Syrian identity. But this has changed recently when the Jolani regime came to power and he waged a genocidal war against not only the Alawites, but also the Druze community inside Syria. Now, the number of Syrians who live in the Golan Heights, who preserved their Syrian identity, and they said that we're Syrian and we will not become Israeli, they have changed their minds. Not only the Syrians living in the Golan Heights, but also the Syrian Druze living in Sweden. So Jolani made sure, and that's why they put him in power, that with his ethnic and religious and sectarian genocidal war against the Syrian people and the indigenous people in Syria, he has made sure that these people are alienated enough, are threatened enough for them to accept Israeli identity, to become part of Israel. Imagine how horrible it is to live under this regime, for the people to change their minds in a matter of few days, 40 to in 73, 83, 93, 2003, and 2023. So 40 years, the Golan was occupied by Israel. And the Syrians living there rejected overwhelmingly the Israeli citizenship passport. In a matter of few days, Jolani changed that completely, that equation. Now, the Syrian people living under occupation in the Golan have changed their minds. They're applying en masse for Israeli citizenship. And the Syrian Druze living inside Syria now, in Sweden, they say, we want Israel as partner, we want Israel as ally, we want Israel to protect us. Imagine what has Jolani done to them, for them to flip like this all of a sudden. And I argued for a long time. And I told you, this is the reason why Israel wanted for Jolani to come to power. As we say in Arabic, طلع الشعر على لساني. Hair has grown on my tongue, trying to explain to the people that this is the main reason why Israel wanted for Jolani to come to power, because he is perfectly able to draw vertical lines in the country with his Al-Qaeda mindset, and the people who fought for him underground, even if he changes his clothes, he wears suits, etc., the people who fought for him, they believe in the Al-Qaeda ideology. Therefore, they will eventually attack the minorities in Syria, ethnic and religious minorities, and this will be the outcome. This will be the result. We have warned it over and over again. And there are so many people in Sweden, Syrian Druze, they didn't listen to us as well. I'm going to come to that and show you some of these examples. Anyways, my friends, when Trump says, I sold the rights and the Golan Heights worth trillions, he's talking about basically a lot of things, right? The land value, water, energy, fuel, settlements, and the long-term process of territorial consolidation, right? But there is something very, very important here, and that is the Greater Israel Project, which we haven't mentioned it today, but here we go. We cannot speak about the Golan Heights without the Greater Israel Project. Let me show you this article quickly. So let's go. So as you know, guys, Netanyahu has increasingly stopped pretending, and in recent years, he has openly described himself as being on a so-called historic and spiritual mission, and he expressed sympathy for the vision of a greater Israel, which is an Israel that extends beyond its 1948 borders to permanently include territories like the West Bank and parts of neighboring lands. Also, this one, I think it's very important. So in this Netanyahu's worldview, the Golan is not a bargaining chip. It is a permanent part of this expanded homeland. And American recognition is the political seal on that map, right? So the Trump proclamation was not just a favor to its Israeli ally. It was basically a major step normalizing particular ideological project as well, and that is the Greater Israel Project. And that Israel can keep what it takes by force as long as Washington signs off, right? This is why, my friends, the Golan question cannot be separated from settlement expansion in the West Bank, all the talk of annexation in the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and now the rhetoric about the Greater Israel Project, right? They are all intertwined. We have to understand it as a package and as how the US empire sees its presence in the region, and also the position and the posture of its main, I don't know if I want to call it an ally. Anyways, Israel in the region as well. So the Golan is basically a proof, right, of a concept. If you hold territory long enough and you have the right fence in Washington, facts on the ground can become sovereignty, right? You change the realities on the ground. But some people may ask, why did Trump feel so comfortable doing this and recognizing Golan as a sovereign Israeli territories? And that brings us to Miriam Adelson. Who is Miriam Adelson? I'm sure many of you already know, but we have to mention a few important info about her. Miriam Adelson is not just a random guest and sitting with Donald Trump, and is not just a random rich donor in the crowd, but rather she is an Israeli American physician and a businesswoman. She is the widow of Sheldon Adelson, the late casino magnate. She is the controlling shareholder of Las Vegas Sands, and as of late 2023, the majority owner of the Dallas Mavericks NBA team. And this deal was worth around $3.5 billion. As of 2025, her wealth is estimated in the mid $30 billion range, making her one of the richest women in the world. But I think it is also more important for our discussion to mention that she has been one of the biggest donors in American politics, especially for the Republican Party. Also, together with her late husband, she poured hundreds of millions of dollars into the Republican campaigns like super PACs and pro-Trump groups. In the 1916 and 2020 cycles, the Adelsons were among Trump's largest financial backers. And in 2024, Miriam alone gave over 200, I believe, million to his re-election efforts. So Miriam Adelson didn't hide her agenda. She has written articles saying basically Trump deserves a book of Trump in the Bible for what he has done for Israel. She has argued that Israelis and Jews owe him gratitude. And during this recent Hanukkah reception where Trump talked about selling the Golan, reports say she jokingly offered $250 million for a potential third-term run for Trump. And of course, Trump happily repeated that on stage. I mean, he brags about it, right? Anyways, so what we have now is a billionaire donor whose core political priority is pushing US policy in a more pro-Israel, more maximalist direction, including support for annexation ideas in the Middle East. We have a president who depends heavily on that donor network for campaign funding, and a foreign policy decision, which is recognizing the Golan, that aligns perfectly with the donor's ideological and strategic wishes. Now, do you think that's a coincidence? I mean, we cannot prove a direct transaction in a courtroom sense. I give you this, you give me that, but the pattern is hard to ignore, right? We have, under Trump, he moved the US embassy to Jerusalem. He recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. He gave the green light to settlement expansion in the West Bank, and practically they will also annex it. He also passed the resolution for Gaza in the UN Security Council with full consensus from the Arabic countries, which will eventually mean permanent occupation of the Gaza Strip. And when we speak about all these annexations, settlement buildings, this is a Greater Israel Project. So if you are an American or you support Trump, I'm truly interested to know if you still believe that Donald Trump is playing some sort of 5D or 4D chess with Israel. I would really love to know your opinion about that. And remember, this Donald Trump, he knows the truth. It's not like he doesn't know. And this is literally him in 2015. This is literally him in 2015. He says Sheldon Adelson is looking to give big dollars to Rubio because he feels he can mold him into his perfect little puppet. I agree. So this was when Sheldon was still alive, and he gave his big dollars to Rubio because, according to Trump, he can mold him into his perfect little puppet. He agrees. He agrees. So who is the little puppet now? Rubio and Trump. Both of them are little puppets for the Israel lobby and for the Israeli donors. Now comes the part where I want to show you a few things about الحيوان السياسية, or the idiots who now pretend that they are surprised with whatever is happening in Syria. So this is George Sabra. George Sabra is a famous Syrian Christian oppositionist to Assad, one of the biggest idiots in the history of the oppositions. Look what he says is, when the American president publicly boasts that he has granted the occupied Syrian Golan with its land, its people, and everything in it and on it to Israel for free, as if it were a private possession of the Trump family, ignoring the fact that Syria is an independent and sovereign state. And it is one of the founding countries of the United Nations. What kind of world are we living in? And what kind of global system governs it and manages its affairs? Monsieur George, we have been warning you about this inevitable outcome for over 14 years. And we have told you that if you guys fight against the Syrian army and cannot distinguish between the regime and the national army, and if you accept the fact that all this multinational takfir is coming from all around the world to destroy the Syrian national army, then the inevitable outcome is that Israel will, one, permanently occupy the Golan Heights, and second, they will expand inside Syrian territories and occupy more land. Now you pretend that oh my God, I'm so shocked. What kind of international system are we living in? Like, as if, like, those people are not like kids. Those people are politicians. They interact with politicians. They are in constant meetings among themselves and with Western officials. You need less than 30 minutes. You need less than 30 minutes in a meeting with any Western official when it comes to Syria. You will already learn what their true objectives are in Syria. If I, as a 24-year-old, when I attended one of these first meetings with these Syrian oppositionists and ambassadors and envoys to Syria in different NGO meetings, whether in Beirut or in Zurich in Switzerland, I understood that they don't care about the well-being of the Syrian people. What they really care about is the destruction of the Syrian state, for them to allow the expansion of Israel into Syrian territories. If I understood that, you, as someone who had 30, 20, 40 years of career and experience in politics, you couldn't understand that, then it shows how unintelligent person you are. And now that all the prophecies that we have been preaching in the past years have turned out to be true, you act like you're surprised. Oh my God, how can this even happen? Well, it's on you. It's on you, George Sabra, and all the other so-called political oppositionists who rejected the premise that this was a CIA-led regime change operation for the exact same outcome that is now happening. I cannot believe that you didn't know that. You are either completely idiot or you were a collaborator. There is no middle in this. I think that when I watch and read and see what is going on and all these people pretending that they didn't know, I don't believe them. I don't believe them. Facts were so blatantly obvious, like into your eyes, right? Like it's like a pen inside your eye. How can you not see that? You chose not to see it. There is a big difference. Now, another example of al-Haywan al-Siyasiyya in Syria is coming from a former Syrian oppositionist. Her name is, and I don't want to insult her personally, and this is not an insult against her. I'm just saying al-Haywan al-Siyasiyya is something that you basically switch off your brain and you become a zombie in the process of an idealist person thinking that, oh, I'm going to protest against Assad and I'm going to create a Switzerland in our country. Well, sorry, that's Haywan al-Siyasi. I'm not talking about the person, but the way you guys handled it, it's Haywan al-Siyasi. Look what she says here. This is, I think, 3 of them are Syrian Druze, and they're talking about the Golani regime now.
And the problem is, I was part of the protest that took place in 2023, and I was one of the women leaders of the protests. I don't say I regret it.
She doesn't even regret it yet. Like this is double Haywan al-Siyasi, right? They cannot even accept the fact that they were wrong. The ABC in politics is when you do something and that something had an impact on the outcome of the 14-year-old war, which led to not only Israeli expansion, but the killing of thousands of Syrian Druze by the Golani regime that you belong to, the least thing to do is to accept accountability and responsibility and say, I was wrong. I was wrong. I was wrong. That's the least thing to do, Lujain Habibti. The least thing to do. Politics is the art of the possible. And in my opinion, people have to make sometimes hard and harsh decisions on whose side they have to align based on the facts on the ground. For example, when the war started and it developed in Syria, you have the options in front of you. You have the Assad government, call it a regime, it's a political authoritarianism. Then you have the people fighting against this political authoritarianism on the ground. Those are who are carrying out the fighting. They are overwhelmingly Islamist Takfiri jihadists. So the logical outcome is if the Takfiris win against the political autocrats, then they will establish a theocracy and a dictatorship, a worst one, and also they will wage a war against Syria's ethnic and religious minorities. This is like simple logic. This is like something that a 7-year-old person should basically know based on the objective reality. But grown-up people like Lujain and others, maybe they were misled. Maybe they were part of this movement. They believed in the revolution. They were all Che Guevaras. It is also a trend. You become a revolutionary. Yeah, you turned out to be a complete ignorant on politics, and you destroyed your country. You destroyed your own people, and now your people are being massacred. The least thing to do is accept accountability, that you say, I was wrong. I was wrong. For example, one of these singers, Syrian singers, I forgot her name now. She is from Syria. She is a Druze. She is from Sweden. And I think her name is Reem something. She, when she was a very vocal anti-Assad activist, she's in Germany. She received probably political asylum or refugee, whatever. And when Assad was ousted, she went to the streets here in Berlin and she started crying and recording herself. لقد سقط الأسد، لقد سقط المجرم، لقد سقط القاتل، لقد. Yes, Mace Harb. She went to the streets celebrating, saying basically, the criminal has fallen, the dictator has fallen, the slaughterer has fallen. Oh my God, record me, I'm crying. Right? This is what she did. And then, I'm sorry that I'm laughing, it's not even funny. The Jolani regime waged a genocidal war against her own people and massacred thousands of them in Syria, right? And what did she do? She said, I was wrong. I shouldn't have supported it. I believe this is the context of what she said. But then I saw her giving a speech in front of hundreds of people, telling them what to do and what they should think. And I'm sorry, politics is not your business. Stick to singing. Stick to singing. It's fine. I respect you as a singer. You're good in singing. You're good probably in arts, but you are horrible in politics. But you're using your fame trying to talk and talk to hundreds of people in a political rally. Sorry, you don't know ABC of politics. Why you accept, like, imagine I go into an art gallery and I give a speech to the people about art. What would you say about me if I go to an art gallery and I tell you, I will give you my opinion about art? I don't know anything about art. These people were wrong once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. They destroyed their country. They made it possible that Jolani wages a genocidal war against their own people, and then they still have the audacity to give speeches in public rallies. And the worst part of it, the people accept it. Why do the people accept her? And I mean, this is not personal, right? I'm just giving an example. Why do people accept people who have no clue about politics to lecture them about politics? I went to a rally here when the massacres happened against the Alawites, and this is the same thing with the Alawites, by the way. They give the podium to people who have their paper and reading like a dinosaur, and all sensationalist speeches have nothing to do with serious political work or lobbying inside the German parliament. And they're like I go to the rally and I listen to them and I'm like, oh, so what has changed basically? And what this person said that could be beneficial and helpful for the people? Nothing. So it's horrible what the political culture among the Syrian people is so like this level. How many of them, and I'm not looking for it, please. This is something that I have to stress. I'm not looking for fame. I'm not looking for political career. Had I wanted a political career, I had 14 years to pursue that. Had I wanted fame, I would have danced on TikTok videos. I didn't even want to have this. This was not the career I wanted for myself, to be a podcaster, to speak to the people and try to have a YouTube channel or whatever. But how many of them in these committees that they have formed in Europe to defend the Syrian people have talked to me and said, do you want to say something? Like, do you want to come and say something? How many of them? 0, right, in these demonstrations. But they give people the opportunity to speak to the Syrian people, regardless of their ethnic and religious background, who have no clue about politics. 0. I just want to show you again how horrible it is to be wrong and not to take responsibility and accountability.
And the problem is, I was part of the protest that took place in 2023, and I was one of the women leaders of the protests. I don't say I regret it.
You should.
No,
You should.
because he was a dictator. Bashar al-Assad was a dictator.
You should regret.
But I'm confused. Like, there was no other devils, but there is like worse, much worse than Bashar al-Assad.
So she came to the conclusion after 14 years and after thousands and thousands and thousands of dead among her own people that Jolani is worse than Assad. Assad was a political autocrat, which means under him, all Syria's ethnic and religious minorities can live in peace and harmony and stability without getting killed for being born in certain ethnicity or religion. Your only taboo is do not challenge the regime in a serious manner that could pose a serious threat to the regime. So the suppression of the Assad government was based on politics, not based on law, religions, sects, etc. And they were political prisoners from the Alawites, they were political prisoners from the Christians, and they were political prisoners from the Islamists, right? But most of the political prisoners in Syria were from the Islamists. And the Druze, Assad made an exception for you, madam, you're talking now. He made an exception for you and he said, if you're a Syrian Druze, you don't have to serve in the Syrian army in Deir ez-Zor, in Aleppo, in Homs, in Hama, like all other Syrians. Because remember, if you're a soldier in the Syrian army from Aleppo, for example, you don't serve in Aleppo. You serve in Homs, Hama, Idlib, Damascus, Deir ez-Zor, etc. You don't serve in your own city. But Assad made an exception for you and said, protect yourself. If you are wanted to the Syrian army, protect yourself in Sweden. This was a privilege for the Druze, right? To protect themselves, because Assad also knew that if he antagonizes the Druze, then Israel will weigh in and try to portray itself as a savior and a protector of the Druze community. He understands these calculations. So he didn't antagonize the Druze, although they were demonstrating and protesting every week against him, as this woman has told us now. It's too late, Habibti. It's too late now. For you, for others, for everyone, it's too late. I hope everybody understands how late it is. Here is another example of al-Haywan al-Siyasi, since we're talking about al-Haywan al-Siyasi. Here is another person, also Syrian Druze. In 2016, Wasim Hassan, son of Sueda, went out alone on a hunger strike, protesting in front of the Russian embassy in the Netherlands to condemn the bombing of civilian neighborhoods in Aleppo. After the Sueda massacre in July 2025, the 63-year-old Wasim wrote, "Abandonment is greater than any speech, and silence about the blood of Sueda is a second crime added to the first crime. And for this reason, it is the duty of every free Syrian today, whether his sect or region, regardless, whatever his sect or it, to raise his voice with Sueda. Solidarity is not an option. Anyways, this guy, as you can see, he was demonstrating and protesting against Assad, going in front of the Russian embassy by himself, stop bombing Aleppo, and he was on a hunger strike, basically. Look, like for them, this is just a show, you know? Like, it's just about ego and show. Look at me, how brave I am and how revolutionary I am. The Aleppo was occupied by the Al-Nusra Front for 4 years, between June 2012 to December 2016, was occupied by the Al-Nusra Front, the offshoot of Al-Qaeda in Syria. And when a joint offensive started by the Syrian National Army, by the Russian forces, by the Iranian advisors, and by the Hezbollahs against these terrorist groups, they have basically pushed them out of the city into Idlib. And those people who were gathered in Idlib and then reoccupied most of Syria, this is the same group which occupied Syria in between 2012 to 2016, is the same group which committed the massacres against his people in Sweden, which he was trying to save and protect. Isn't this الحيوان السياسية? This is الحيوان السياسية. One of our friends says كيفوك لا بقى تعذب حالك شعبنا كله من كل الطوائف إلا من رحم Yeah, I know. بعرف حبيبي والله بعرف. ما بعرف إذا أنت شاب أو بنت. This person says, Kibok, don't tire yourself. Most of our people have no principles. I know. But I still try to show you what it means to be, to make something that is so harmful. Maybe, just maybe, in the future, I'm saying, people would avoid such mistakes. But I remember when former Syria's permanent envoy to the UN, Bashar al-Jafari, Dr. Bashar al-Jafari, one of the best diplomats Syria had in recent history, he said something like, people think that WMD, or weapons of mass destruction, are the worst type of weapons. And he said, no, that's the الحيوان السياسية. And I'm showing you examples now to see some examples of this حيوان السياسية of people among the Syrian people. Kevork, you must start focusing on Egypt. Something is cooking there. I have made few videos about Egypt, my friend. But if there is something serious, please let me know in the comments that I would definitely have someone from Egypt. Yeah. He says, or she says, I feel like our people have the memory of the fish. If the people in Damascus have forgotten the missiles and rockets of Zahran al-Lush, this was the Islam's army rockets and missiles falling over the heads of the people. And now those are the same people going and celebrating Jolani. Anyways, what I want to try, why I do these streams is for me to show you that bad choices by the people in a certain country can lead to destructive results that would impact everyone. And do not underestimate this type of mistakes. And I have to make commentaries about some of these mistakes for other people to see. Like when I made this video yesterday about Venezuela, I said, don't be an idiot. Learn from the open books of other people's experiences, right? This is very unfortunate. This is very... for my country, at least, Syria is gone. So I don't have hope from Syria. I don't have hope even from the Syrian people. I am very much disappointed. I'm very much depressed about what happened to the country where I was born and raised and lived and studied. Sometimes I used to ask myself the question, what makes me basically wake up every day in the morning and make streams, videos about Syria? Back in the day, it was a combination of my care and love for my nation and its people as a driving energy, and also my hatred to the bad actors who destroyed and basically my country. Now, I cannot really say that I have so much care or love, or I do care about people, but not everyone. I'm being very honest with you. I do care about people, of course. And I would always be a voice for the voiceless, for those who are being subjugated and suppressed and killed inside Syria. But you cannot really tell me that these sentiments that I used to have, the sense of belonging to Syria is the same. It's not the same. It's not the same. People in Syria have done so much damage to their country, and then they celebrated it. I cannot really forgive that. I will show you a video of how we were and what happened, basically. so sad. Anyways, I will show you what Syrians had and what did they do to their country. And because today we spoke about the Golan, and this is basically a video from Mount Hermon before the fall of the Assad government. I will show you a video from Mount Hermon just before the fall of the Assad government. If you are Syrian, if you are an Arab or you understand Arabic, I will first show you the video and then I will probably explain to you what he's saying here.
نحن هون مراس جبل الشيخ. مثل ما انكم شايفين الوضع كثير ثلج. ممكن ايام تمر علينا تحتاج ارتفاعه 4-5 امتار، بس الحمد لله عايشين. العالم تحت عم بتقول انه وضع الكهرباء سيء ووضع الكهرباء مو منيح. شوفوا عنا نحن عندنا الكهرباء في المر. بس الحمد لله عايشين. صحيح الوضع صعب هون بس نحن اولاد البلد. اللي بيقول برا عايشين ومو ناقصه شيء، ناقصه شغله واحده، ناقصه وطن. هذا الشيء ما بيعرف يقول لا الحمد لله ظروفنا صعبه هون. الشباب ما بدكم ما مبسوطين بس صابرين كرمال. ما رح اطول عليكم كثير. شكرا كثير.
So, if you understand Arabic, he says, we are the Syrian Arab Army. He is in Mount Hermon. And he says, we hear complaints from ordinary people, basically complaining about the lack of electricity. And he says, look at us here. We have zero electricity. We're living in harsh conditions. And we're surviving here. And he says there are people outside of Syria, they say, look at us, we're living now our lives like happily. Probably he means about some of these anti-Syria refugees. And he says, yeah, maybe you're happy there, but you know what you don't have? You don't have a homeland. That's what we have here. This is the Syria I belong to, what this guy said. I don't belong to the people who destroy the country. I don't belong to the terrorists. I don't belong to the takfiris. And I don't belong to the people who adopted this Haywanist CSE, which finished the country completely. Anyways. Tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central European time, my friends, 11 a.m. Eastern American time, we will do our regular show with our dear friend Tarek Chiril Amar, Cold War 2.0. If you're looking forward to that, please subscribe to Syriana Analysis, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys, whether on YouTube or on Rumble, and a special thanks to our moderators, and I will see you tomorrow. Peace.